Hey guys, welcome back to Dreamland. I've got a little surprise for you today, especially for all the WangXian fans out there. You've been asking me for WangXian content for so long, so I thought why not give it a try? I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm already working on a long Sangwang story, so this one's going to be a short and sweet one shot. Alright then, let's begin. Autumn arrived on campus like a mischievous guest, scattering golden leaves over stone pathways and spilling sunlight in lazy, warm patches. Students trudged across the court, some late, some over-caffeinated, some utterly absorbed in their own worlds. In the middle of it all, someone existed like a comet, impossible to ignore. Tall, handsome, and impossibly confident, being thrived on attention. His laugh was loud, his gestures dramatic, and his charms precise, a finely tuned weapon of mass distraction. If someone glanced his way, it was already too late. Wing had noticed them noticing him. He strutted toward the entrance of the campus cafe, hands stuffed into the pockets of his designer jacket, obvious to the way people craned their neck to watch him. Wing loved this, the subtle gasp, the admiring whispers, but mostly he loved being liked, being noticed, being the sun in someone's otherwise boring day. That was until Lan Wangji walked in. Wangji was the opposite, slightly hunched from too many late-night coding sessions, glasses perched awkwardly on the bridge of his nose, hair perpetually messy but in a I actually don't care kind of way. He had an aura of strictness that didn't need to be spoken. It radiated in the way he scanned the cafe, frowned at the too loud chatter, and muttered to himself as he set his laptop down. And for some inexplicable reason, he ignored Wang completely. Wing froze the moment Wang Ji walked past him in the crowded cafe, utterly ignoring his brilliant, perfectly timed wink. For the first time in years, someone didn't respond to him. No one ignores me, Wei whispered to himself, incredulous. Wang Ji didn't just ignore him, he didn't notice him at all. Wing's carefully cultivated world built on admiration, smiles, and inevitable charm crumbled like sand through fingers. Wing froze, jaw slack, stunned, ignored by him. No one ignored Wing. His world, carefully built on admiration, had just been turned upside down. Excuse me? Wing asked, sliding into the seat across from Wang Ji with a grin so bright it could have been a sunbeam. Do you always ignore handsome people, or am I just lucky? Wang Ji barely looked up. Do you always talk to strangers, or am I just unlucky? That was the start. The first week was a series of comedic misfires. Wing tried everything. He accidentally dropped his notebook in front of Wang Ji, who simply moved his bag to avoid it. He forgot to close his locker so Wang Ji would see him struggling. Wang Ji raised an eyebrow and walked away. He tried serenading Wang Ji outside the library, only to be searched and threatened with reporting. He tripped accidentally in front of Wang Ji during calculus, landing in a dramatic heap on the floor. Wang Ji stepped around him, neatly avoiding contact, muttering something about watch your steps. Wing tried borrowing Wang Ji's notes, hoping for a moment of shared attention. Wang Ji looked over his glasses, handed him the notebook, and returned to his work without a word. Wing attempted to corner Wang Ji in the library with his usual grin, charm radiating like a beacon. Wang Ji's response, silence. Wing's grin faltered. Every failure only fueled Wing's determination. No one had ever been immune to him, and Wang Ji was like a wall of calm, indifferent precision that Wing couldn't charm or scare or impress. This pattern continued. Wing was relentless. Wang Ji was unflappable. The campus quickly learned that Wing's obsession with Wang Ji was both hilarious and tragic, like watching a cat chase its own shadow. Weeks passed. Wing's obsession shifted from frustration to curiosity. Wang Ji wasn't arrogant, he wasn't cruel, He just didn't respond to the rituals, and the more Wing watched, the more fascinated he became. Wang Ji was fascinating not because of looks or charm, though Wing was painfully aware of both, but because of the little details. He noticed how Wang Ji tapped his pencil 3 times before taking a sip of water, how he scribbled notes in blue pen while everyone else used black, how he hummed softly under his breath when solving particularly tricky problems. Wing found himself sneaking glances in classes he didn't care about, memorizing the details like hidden treasures. But he didn't say a word. Friends began teasing Wing mercilessly. You're obsessed. They said, he doesn't even look at you. Of course, I'm not obsessed, Wing protested, but secretly he was keeping a score of every little gesture. The annual campus festival arrived, bringing chaos, music, and Way's latest grand scheme, a bright, inflatable obstacle course to show off its charm. Wang Ji ignored it entirely, volunteering at the science booth, teaching kids to make tiny circuits. Wing, drenched in sweat, after falling off the obstacle course, realized something. Wang Ji didn't chase attention, he didn't need applause, and yet Wing couldn't stop watching him. For the first time, Wing didn't want to be noticed. He wanted to understand Wang Ji. From that moment, the dynamic between them shifted subtly. A study session dragged on for hours with Wing distracted by Wang Ji's quiet focus. Group projects become competition of wit and strategy, where Wing's antics often backfired. Late night dorm walks were filled with nonsensical chatter from being met with dry and thoughtful observation from Wang Ji. The crush simmered unspoken like embers under a hearth. Friends noticed but Wing refused to admit anything, not even to himself. As months passed, Wing's staging became softer, more personal. Wang Ji's occasional smiles or subtle concern were enough to derail Wings completely. A quiet bond formed, built on shared experience, humor, and the tiny gestures no one else noticed. Wing had no idea that Wang Ji had started noticing him too, in the smallest ways that only someone paying attention would catch. But love, that was far away. Wing's heart was inching toward it. But it wouldn't ignite fully until some moment forced confession out of him. The semester has settled into a comfortable rhythm with Wing constantly trying to get Wang Ji to notice me more. It was exhausting but exhilarating. Library study sessions became the new battleground. Wing would plop down across from Wang Ji with his overstuffed backpack, pretending he had accidentally forgotten his notes. Wang Ji, meticulous and precise, would glance over Wang's raised an eyebrow and continue typing. Wing's heart would thud in frustration, both because Wang Ji didn't react and because he didn't want to react. One evening, Wing decided to try a new tactic, study together. You'll actually help me focus, right? Wing asked, facing for an opening. I'll help you focus on your mistakes. Wang Ji replied, calm and blunt, eyes not leaving his laptop screen. Wing laughed awkwardly. That's encouraging. Hours passed, Wing talked, fumbled, and distracted himself while Wang Ji typed silently, occasionally correcting Wing's mistakes with a dry tone that made Wing laugh more than it should have. For the first time, Wing realized he enjoyed Wang Ji's quiet presence more than his own dramatics. And Wang Ji noticed, not with fireworks or declarations, just a small faint smile as Wing muttered to himself, oblivious. Dorm life was never peaceful, especially for Wing. He was loud, poetic, and always scheming some new way to get attention or to entertain himself. One night the lights flickered and the power went out, and Wing's roommate groaned. Wing, did you trip the breaker again? Wing shrugged. I may have been demonstrating the physics of electricity with extreme flair. Wang Ji, who had been quietly working on a coding assignment, In there, Jesse Tom appeared in the hall with a flashlight. "You're ridiculous," he said. Then, after a pause, he added, "You're also lucky you didn't break anything." Wing's chest fluttered. That pause, that small acknowledgement. It was nothing, but it was something. Rui, one of Wing's friends, who noticed Wing's obsession with Wangji almost immediately, she took every opportunity to teach Wing. "Still trying to impress Mr. Stoic over there?" Rui would ask with a smirk. Wing would sputter, flustered, and Wangji would simply ignore the drama, eyes on his work, a faint smirk curling at the corners of his lips. The subtle tension built every time Wing tried to show off, only for Wangji to remain unshaken. It was frustrating, and secretly it was addictive. Wing couldn't stop trying. Spring approached, bringing the campus festival of colors, where students threw powdered pigments and laughter filled the air. Wing immediately decided this was the perfect opportunity to impress Wangji. Wing ended up covered head to toe in bright orange and green powder after sleeping in a puddle while chasing Wangji to toss color at him. Wangji, completely clean, looked at Wing with that same calm stare. "You are a mess," Wangji said, shaking his head. Wing blinked, powder in his hair dripping wet. "But you're smiling." Wangji shook his head, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "I'm not, you just make it hard not to notice." Wing's heart skipped. He was falling deeper than he wanted to admit, but Wangji still didn't fully acknowledge it. By mid-semester, Wing's feeling had grown beyond infatuation. Every time Wangji laughed quietly at something small, every time he offered a kind word to someone else, Wing's chest ached. He tried to deny it, to hide it behind jokes and antics, but deep down he was hopelessly, unshakably smitten. And Wangji was noticing in ways that Wing couldn't see. Subtle glances, lingering, careful concern for Wing's over-the-top schemes, a warmth beneath his usual stoicism. He hadn't admitted it even to himself, but the seed was planted. The start of the semester midterm brought group projects, and Wing somehow ended up paired with Wangji. Not that it mattered, Wangji was calm, efficient, and focused, while Wing was, well, chaotic. "Don't just doodle in the margin," Wangji said, I just scanning Wing's notebook. "We have deadlines." Wing laughed, leaning over to sneak a smile at him. "I'm adding flair. Inspiration is important." Wangji raised an eyebrow. "It's a report, not a painting." For the first time, Wing noticed the way Wangji's attention lingered not on him exactly, but on the work they were creating together. And yet, every small interaction made Wing's chest tighten in a way he didn't understand. The project forced them to spend hours together in the library, debating, laughing, and occasionally bickering. Wing would teach, Wangji would correct, and neither could deny the small enjoyment of the other's company. One rainy evening, Wing and Wangji stayed late in the library, waiting for a bus that had been delayed. Wing, shivering under his hoodie, tried to make a small talk. "You ever just get bored of being so serious all the time?" Wing asked. Wangji didn't answer immediately, just looked out the window at the rain. Then softly, "I don't get bored, I just focus on what matters." Wing nodded, his words stuck in his throat. He wanted to say, "You matter," but the courage failed him. Instead, he muttered something about the rain and said nothing. That night, Wing realized he had feelings, deep ones, dangerous ones. Wangji wasn't just an obsession anymore. Wangji had become essential, a part of his thoughts that he couldn't ignore. As if things weren't complicated enough, Rui returned to campus with a smirk and a new tactic. "So still chasing Mr. Stoneface over there?" Wing glared and shot back, "He's not." You don't understand. Wanji, hearing only a fragment of the conversation, raised an eyebrow. Do you always argue with people like that? Wing froze, something in Wanji's tones, neutral, calm, almost amused, made Wing's heart escape. He wanted to explain, but he couldn't. He didn't even fully understand his own feelings yet. Roy's teasing only highlighted the tension, forcing Wing to spend more time around Wanji, proving himself in a small, ridiculous ways. The mid-year festival of lanterns became the turning point. The students released lanterns into the sky, writing wishes and secrets on the paper before letting them float. Wing had already written, "I want Wangji to notice me," in bright letters on his lantern, thinking he'd finally get some acknowledgement. Wangji's lantern was simple, neat, with a small, unamusing wish. "I hope everyone finds someone who matters." Wing watched as Wangji's lantern floated into the sky, the warm glow reflecting on his face. The simplicity of it, the calm sincerity, hit him harder than any grand gesture ever could. That night, Wing went to bed thinking maybe love isn't about dramatic declaration or charm. Maybe it's just noticing. As a spring depended, Wing and Wangji's bond strengthened in subtle ways. A study session became comfortable silence instead of chaotic distractions. Dorm hall encounters included small jokes and shared snacks. Wangji began to look for being in crowds without realizing it, lingered in conversation slightly longer than necessary. Wing's friend noticed the change in him, teaching him gently. "You're in love," they said. Wing scoffed, but secretly he couldn't deny it. Wangji, on the other hand, remained calm, but those small, imperceptible gestures showed that he too was slowly realizing something he hadn't admitted even to himself. During a campus camping trip, a minor accident forced Wangji and Wing to work together late into the night, setting up tents and starting a campfire. Wing tripped again, classic Wing, and Wangji caught him effortlessly. Their faces were inches apart. Wing's breath caught. "You really are ridiculous," Wangji said softly, not teasing, just stating a fact. Wing laughed nervously. "I know." Neither moved. The night stretched around them, stars shining overhead. Wing realized he could stay there forever, just near Wangji, breathing the same air. And Wangji realized the same thing in his quiet, observant way. The campus club's fair was always a disaster waiting to happen, especially for Wing. Determined to get Wangji to notice him, Wing signed up for every club imaginable: drama, debate, photography, even the fencing club. Wangji, on the other hand, signed only for the coding club and permanently ignored Wing's grandiose appearance. Wing found himself juggling ridiculous schedules, showing up in dramatic costumes for the drama club, while Wangji walked past in plain clothes, calmly scrolling through his phone. Wing tried waving, calling out, doing backflips. Wangji didn't flinch. By the end of the day, Wing was exhausted, covered in paint from the art club, and somehow had joined three clubs he had no idea how to participate in. Wangji quietly helped Wing fix a broken needle with a single precise gesture. Wing's chest fluttered. Why does he do that? He thought. Why does it feel like he cares even when he doesn't? The literature department organized a weekend study trip to a nearby historical town. Wing saw this as the perfect chance for bonding, but Wangji remained methodical, taking careful notes, ignoring Wing's attempts to impress. During a guided tour, Wing accidentally tripped on uneven cobblestones, sending his notebook flying. Wangji stooped, picked it up, and handed it back without a word, but he stayed a step closer than necessary to make sure Wing didn't fall again. Wing noticed he stayed, and it made him warmer than any sunlight or praise could. Late night study session became their ritual. Wang Ji never spoke much beyond correcting Wing's mistake, but Wing found himself opening up about home, family, dreams, fears, and Wang Ji listened. One night, Wing admitted quietly, I don't think anyone's ever really understood me. Wang Ji tilted his head, studying him carefully. Maybe they weren't paying attention. Wing's heart thumped, not because of the words exactly, but because of the way Wang Ji said them. Calm, serious, observant. During a campus festival of lights, Wing got bumped into by running late. Wang Ji reached out reflexively to steady him, and their hand brushed. Wings froze, his face heating instantly. You're too clumsy, Wang Ji said lightly, but there was a flicker in his eyes, something softer than usual. Wing stumbled on his words. Thanks. Wang Ji just nodded, moving on, but Wing couldn't stop thinking about that fleeting touch. For the first time, he realized that it wasn't just admiration or infatuation anymore. Wing's friends noticed his obsession, teasing him endlessly. Why do you always follow Wang Ji around like a puppy? I'm not. Wing began, but even he knew it was true. Wang Ji's friend began noticing too, subtle smiles and whispered comments, but Wang Ji remained stoic, letting everything unfold without acknowledging his own feelings. The slow burn depended. Wing wanted Wang Ji wasn't fair, and neither could admit it yet. It had started raining just before dusk. Wing was stuck in the library, grumbling as he peeked through the tall windows. The treasure turned heavy within minutes, and most students dashed for cover. Wing sighed dramatically, muttering, Of course, the weather hates me too. Maybe it just knows you needed a break, came a quiet voice. Wing turned, and there he was, Wang Ji in a grey sweater holding an umbrella. His calm eyes reflected the soft gold of dying daylight. You're still here? Wing asked. I thought you left early for that robotics meeting. It ended, Wang Ji said, glancing toward the window. I saw you from the gate. You don't carry an umbrella, do you? Wing grinned suspiciously. I was planning to outrun the raindrops. That's not how physics works, Wang Ji replied deadpan. Then I guess you're my rescue. Without waiting for permission, Wing slipped beside him under the umbrella. It was a small, forcing them too close. The raindrops pattered above them, a rhythm that felt strangely intimate. Wang Ji didn't say much, but his silence wasn't empty. It was comfortable, like a secret only the two of them shared. Halfway through the path, Wing whispered, You know, you're the first person who ever came back for me. Wang Ji's step slowed, his expression softened. People don't usually leave someone behind in the rain. They do, Wing murmured, his voice barely audible. If they think you'll never need them. For a second, Wang Ji's hand twitched, almost reaching for Wing's, but instead he tilted the umbrella slightly toward Wing's side, letting the rain fall more on himself, and Wing noticed. Of course he did. Weeks later, their routine became inevitable. Wing's chaotic notes scattered across the dorm table, Wang Ji sitting beside him, quietly correcting everything. That night, power went out. The only light came from the small lamp on Wang Ji's desk. The world outside was silent, the kind of silence that made your heartbeat sound too loud. Wing leaned his chin on his arm. You're so focused all the time. Don't you ever get tired? Wang Ji blinked, closing his laptop. Tired of what? Of being perfect? Wing said honestly. Of being yourself. You act like nothing gets to you, but everyone has something that hurts. Wang Ji was quiet for a long time. The clock ticked faintly in the background. Then, without looking at him, Wang Ji said, When I was younger, I used to think being strong meant staying quiet. even when things fell apart. Wang straightened a little, sensing the rawness in his tone. Wangji continued, "My parents wanted results, not emotions, so I learned to fix everything myself. I don't think I ever realized how lonely that made me." The confusion was so soft, it barely read the air between them. Wing didn't interrupt, he just reached out, hesitant but sincere, and touched Wang's sleeve. "You don't have to fix everything alone," he said, "not when I'm around." For once, Wangji smiled, a real one, not a polite curve, but something tender, vulnerable. It made Wayne's chest ache. After exams, the campus was unusually quiet. The stars glimmered faintly above, and a cool breeze swept through the grounds. Wing dragged Wang Ji out for a stress-relieving walk. Even though Wang Ji protested, he had assignments to finish. They wandered aimlessly, talking about silly things, favorite snacks, embarrassing school moments, future dreams. Then Wing asked out of nowhere, "If you could live anywhere, where would you go?" Wang Ji thought for a moment. "Somewhere peaceful, maybe by the sea." Wayne chuckled. "That's so typical of you, calm, stable, poetic, me. I'd go where things are loud and alive." Wang Ji smiled faintly. "Then you'd get tired in a week." "Maybe," Wayne said, eyes softening. "But if you were there, maybe not." Wang Ji turned sharply at that, startled by the honesty. Wing pretended to focus on the stars, but his heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. The air between them grew still, heavy, meaningful, fragile. Wangji didn't reply, but he didn't step away either. Sometimes silence said everything. One early winter morning, Wing woke up shivering. The heater in his dorm had broken again. He wrapped himself in two blankets and sneezed dramatically through the morning classes. Wangji sighed and dragged him to his own room. "You'll get sick if you keep pretending to be fine." Wangji scolded, handing him a cup of warm tea. Wing grinned weakly. "You're surprisingly caring, you know. I'm just preventing extra trouble." Wangji replied, but his tone was too soft to sound convincing. Wing looked at him, really looked. The way Wangji's fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted the cup, the small furrow of concern between his brows. He wasn't emotionless, he just didn't know how to show how much he cared. Wing whispered, "You're different when you worry." Wangji froze. "Don't analyze me." Wing smiled faintly, too late. They both laughed quietly, and for a fleeting second it felt like home. A few days later, Wing got into a small accident during a football practice. Just a sprained ankle, but Wangji showed up at the infirmary faster than anyone expected. He didn't say much, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. "Why are you always getting hurt?" Wangji muttered, voice tense. Wing smiled. "So you'll worry." Wangji glared but didn't move away. He stayed by Wing's side the entire evening. He even helped him back to the dorm, supporting his weight with quiet patience. When Wing thanked him softly, Wangji looked down and said, almost whispering, "Just don't scare me like that again." Wing's breath caught because that wasn't logic, that was care, that was love. Still unspoken, but burning quietly between them. After the injury, Wing was forced to rest. He limped around campus like a tragic prince, using his charm to get snacks and sympathy from everyone except Wangji. Wangji still treated him normally, too normally. Wing pouted one afternoon in the canteen. "You don't even ask how I'm feeling. You're cold-hearted." Wangji looked up from his tray and bothered. "You're eating cake and fries. You're fine." Wing gasped dramatically. "I'm hurt physically and emotionally." "You live." But then Bangji did something unexpected. He reached across the table and adjusted the bandage on Wing's ankle. His fingers gentle, his eyes focused. For a moment, everything around them blurred. Wing forgot the teasing come back on his tongue. Wanji touch lingered longer than necessary, and when their eyes met, something fragile and sweet passed between them, something neither dared to name. It happened the next week. A transfer student arrived, smart, tall, confident. His name was Rain, and he instantly clicked with Wing. They laughed loudly in hallways, shared lunch, and even walked together after class. Wangji said nothing, but he noticed. He noticed how Wing's laughter sounded lighter with Rain, how Rain leaned in too close, how Wing seemed unaware of how much space he occupied in someone else's life. One evening, Wangi walked past the courtyard and saw Rain handing Wing a packet of his favorite snacks. Wing beamed and said, "You remembered." Wangi's chest tightened. He didn't stop walking, but something cold settled beneath his ribs. Later, Wing came knocking at his door as usual. "Hey, I brought snacks." Wangi didn't open for a long time. When he finally did, his tone was even but distant. "You don't have to bring things here. You can spend time with your new friend." Wing blinked, caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," Wangji said, going back to his desk, but his hands were still. Wing studied him quietly. For the first time he saw it, the faint flicker of jealousy behind Wangji's calm expression, and it made something inside him bloom like wildfire. For days things were tense. Wangji avoided eye contact, and Wing, unsure whether to laugh or yell, decided to test him. He started talking about Rain more often, exaggerating stories, smiling too wide, and Wangji, a stoic, logical Wangji, finally cracked. During one late night study session, Wangji suddenly stood up, closed the book, and said sharply, "You don't have to keep saying his name every 5 minutes." Wing blinked. "Why not? He's my friend." "Friends don't." Wangji stopped himself, jaw tight. "Forget it." "No, say it." Wing pressed, stepping closer. "Friends don't what?" Wangji exhaled slowly, eye darting away. "They don't make it this hard to focus." The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Wing's lips parted, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. He whispered, "Wangji, are you jealous?" Wangji's eyes flickered. "You're imagining things." But his voice trembled, betraying him, and Wing smiled faintly, sadly, fondly. Finally, something real. A week later, it rained again. Wing found himself on the same rooftop as before, soaked, watching the world blur in silver lines. He didn't know why he came, only that he couldn't stop thinking about Wangji's face that night. When Wangji appeared behind him, holding an umbrella again, it felt like fate repeating itself. "You'll catch a cold," Wangji said softly. "Then catch it with me," Wing murmured, smiling faintly. Wangji sighed, stepping closer, umbrella hovering over both of them. "Why do you always do this to yourself?" Wing looked up at him, water glistening on his lashes. "Because it's the only way I get to see what's real in you." Wangji froze. The rain filled the silence, their breaths the only warmth between them. Wing whispered, voice cracking, "You don't have to love me back. Just stop pretending you don't feel anything." Wangji closed his eyes. His grip on the umbrella trembled slightly, but he still didn't answer. Wing turned away, laughing weakly. "That's fine. You don't owe me anything." Wangji watched him walk away, the umbrella tilting uselessly in the wind. And for the first time, Wangji realized he didn't just care. He couldn't imagine a world without Wing in it. Wangji didn't see Wing for 2 days. No message, no knocks, no laughter echoing through the hall. At first, he told himself Wing was busy. Then worry replaced logic. He checked the library, the canteen, even the football felt nothing. By the third day, panic bloomed. He found out Wing had gone home for a family event, leaving abruptly after their rooftop talk. That night, Wangji couldn't sleep. His world felt too quiet, too still. He opened his laptop to finish an assignment, but every word blurred into thoughts of Wing. His laugh, his messy notes, his stubborn warmth. And that was the moment it hit him, not gently, but like lightning through the dark. He loved him. He loved Wing in every way that mattered, in the way he noticed a small thing, in the way silence felt safe with him, in the way chaos became beautiful when Wing was near. And he hated himself for realizing it too late. This semester break came quietly, and with it Wing's absence. Days turned into weeks, and Wangji began to feel the weight of everything he hadn't said. He tried burying himself in projects, but every time he opened his laptop, his eyes drifted toward the empty chair beside his desk. The one where Wing used to sit, tapping his pen against the table, humming songs under his breath. He thought of all the things he should have said: stay, don't leave, I care, more than I should. But logic had always been Wangji's armor, and logic never taught him how to love, until now, when silence had more than words ever could. So one morning, without overthinking, he packed a small bag and took the first train to Wing City. His hands trembled on his phone as he typed, "I'm coming to see you." He didn't accept a reply, but hours later one came, just 3 words. "Then hurry up." Wang's family lived in a quiet neighborhood near the coast. When Wang Ji arrived, the sky was painted in soft orange light, the kind that made the world look fragile and infinite at once. Wing was sitting on the front steps, barefoot, wearing an oversized hoodie. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of Wang Ji. Surprise, confusion, then something warmer. "You actually came," Wing said softly. "I said I would. You hate travel. I hate not seeing you more." The air between them shifted. No rain, this time no chaos, just stillness, the kind that holds everything unspoken. Wing looked down, fidgeting with the strings of his hoodie. "Why now, Wangji? You had so many chances before." Wangji hesitated, stepping closer. "Because I was scared. You you make me lose control of everything I thought I understood. You make me feel." Wing's gaze lifted to meet his. "Feel what?" Wang's throat tightened. He took a small breath and said it quietly, but with the weight of all the silence before. "Like I'm finally alive." Wing didn't say anything right away. He just looked at him, eyes glassy, lips parted as if trying to catch every syllable. "You're serious," he whispered. Wangji nodded. "I thought I could stay distant, that it was just friendship. But when you left, it felt like the world lost its color. I couldn't even breathe right." Wing's laugh broke, soft, trembling. "You really are late, you know." "I know." He took another step, their distance gone now. "But I'm here." Wing looked at him for a long, fragile moment before finally speaking. "I waited for you to say that every single day." The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was full, full of everything they'd been holding back. Then Wanji reached out hesitantly and brushed a strand of hair from Wing's forehead. Wings leaned in just enough for their foreheads to touch. The world around them dissolving into the sound of waves and their uneven breathing. No dramatic music, no grand gesture, just two people finally finding the courage to stop pretending. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The space between them pulsed with quiet longing, heavy and fragile all at once. Then slowly, as if drawn by something they'd both been denying for far too long, Wing lifted his chin. Wangji's breath hitched, his eyes flicking down, uncertain, hopeful, and before either of them could second guess it, their lips met. It wasn't a perfect kiss, too soft, too hesitant, too full of years of unspoken words, but it was real, honest. It tasted of rain and relief, of something that had always been meant to happen. When they finally parted, Wang's eyes were bright, his voice barely above a whisper. That took you long enough. Wanji smiled faintly, his forehead resting against Wang's once more. I was waiting for the right moment. Wang laughed softly, breath trembling against his lips. And this was it. Wanji nodded. It always was. And the next morning they sat on the beach with 2 cups of coffee watching the sunrise. Wang nudged him lightly. So what happens now? You'll go back to being logical and unreadable again. Wangji smirked. Maybe, unless you keep ruining my routine. Wang grinned. That's my specialty. Wangji turned to look at him, sunlight catching on his face. You really don't make anything easy. Where's the fun in easy? Wang teased. Then softer. I always thought love had to be loud, but with you, it's quite real. Wangji's eyes softened. It was always real. Wang leaned his head on Wangji's shoulder, sighing contentedly. Then don't ever leave again. I won't, Wangji said. Not even if you try to chase me away. And for the first time, both of them believed it. Back on campus, life returned to its noisy rhythm. Assignments, laughter, pranks, endless late-night snacks. Wang was still the charming chaos that drew people in. Wangji was still the calm anchor, somehow managed to keep him grounded. But now, when they walked side by side, hands brushing lightly, everyone could tell something had changed. Not the way they bickered, not the teasing, but the quiet way their eyes found each other in a crowded room. They didn't need to say, I love you every day. It was there in every shared umbrella, every late night coffee, every look that lasted a heartbeat too long. Love hadn't come crashing like thunder. It had crept in like rain, steady and soft, until they both realized they'd been standing in it all along. So this is where the story ends. I hope you all liked it. Please share your thoughts in the comments if you enjoyed. Maybe I'll make another one. And since today Diwali, if you're one of those who prefers a cozy room over noisy crackers, I hope this story kept you entertained. Wishing all my viewers a very happy Diwali. My suggestion, enjoy laddu instead of the loud crackers. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.